Hello everybody, I hope you're very well wherever you are. Where I am today, it is really, really windy, and the wind is smashing against the window panes. And on top of this, out on the streets, there are some people with very fast cars with the exhaust pipes cut off them so that they crack and boom and sort of make exploding noises and bang, really. So if you hear any bangings, that's what it is. Yes, I've come to read you chapter 38 of Molly Moon's incredible book of Hypnotism, the book that I wrote. My name's Georgia Byng. Today for you to look at, because this is a chapter where all the children are back together again, old friends together again. I've got two things on that are from friends of mine. One is this t-shirt, which is from my friend Tierney Gearon, who is a really amazing photographer, and I'm wearing that and thinking about her. And behind me here is a picture by the wonderful Georgie Hopton. Both Tierney and Georgie are really good artists, and I admire them a lot. So here for you to look at my friend's pictures, t-shirt, and a lovely sort of sunny bowl of flowers, because the house has been tidied up and they're all ready to launch into a new life in Hardwick House. Chapter 38. Mrs. Trinklebury was delighted when she got Molly's telephone call. She arrived at Hardwick House jolly and rosy-cheeked, like a roly-poly pudding wrapped in a woolly coat. She held shopping bags that were packed with delicious things to cook for supper, and her old knitting bag, which was stuffed full of homemade fairy cakes. Once inside the house, she handed these out. But my word, she said, looking about her. This place has gone to seed, hasn't it? Dearie me, it smells like an unclean kennel. After Molly and Rocky had explained the situation to Mrs. Trinklebury, it didn't take much pleading to persuade her to come and live with them. You've got to come, Mrs. Trinklebury, explained Molly. We need you to help look after us. Otherwise they'll send some other Miss Addiston, warned Rocky. Please come, Mrs. Trinklebury, because we really need a mum, said Ruby. Someone to make us fairy cakes, declared Jinx. Mrs. Trinklebury sighed and folded her arms. You know, it's been lonely at home since my Albert died, and I've been even lonelier since Miss Addiston sacked me. I'd love to come. Molly and Rocky gave her a hug. You're a star, Mrs. T. Then they took Mrs. Trinklebury downstairs to meet Notman. Notman had an apron on, and his arms were elbow high in bubble-a-lot bubbles. He'd already disposed of the smelly bins and cleared the kitchen cupboards. The kitchen now smelled of lemony cleaning cream. Mr. Notman, said Molly, this is Mrs. Trinklebury. She's coming to live here, and she's going to be in charge. And you will get on with her, Rocky whispered quietly. Ah, hello, said Notman, taking off his rubber gloves and shaking hands politely. Nice to meet you, said Mrs. Trinklebury. You're doing a lovely job of clearing up. Thank you, said Notman, smiling, chuffed that his hard work was appreciated. Well, said Mrs. Trinklebury, embarrassed and not knowing what to say next. As I said, Molly, I'd love to come back. I'll be bringing Poppet, if that's all right." Then she explained to Notman, "She's my pet budgerigar, and she sings beautiful. I'm sure you'll like her." "You have a budgie?" said Notman, gazing at Mrs. Trinklebury as if she was a goddess. "Oh, yes," said Mrs. Trinklebury, embarrassed again by Notman's attention. She pulled on a spare pair of rubber gloves. "If we're going to slap this place into shape, Molly, I'd better get started." By supper time, wonderful smells of a roast dinner with potatoes and peas and sweet corn and gravy were wafting through the orphanage. The building was warm as Mrs. Trinklebury had arranged for oil to be delivered, and the boiler was now running full pelt. Molly and Rocky gave all the children bubble bath and shampoo and brand new soft towels, which Molly had bought at the airport. By 8 o'clock, everyone was washed, dry, wearing something new chosen from Molly's suitcases. Even Gordon, Roger and Craig found T-shirts that they liked. The dining room tables were laid sparkling with glasses and lit with candles, and the fire blazed. Supper was the best Molly had ever had. Not the best food, although it was good, but because it was fantastic to see everyone again, even Hazel and her old gang. And how different they were now. They were shadows of their former selves, and were very quiet as they ate and drank. The smaller children, on the other hand, got chattier and noisier as the evening went by, making Mrs. Trinklebury and even Notman laugh. Then Jerry piped up, "So, Mrs. Trinklebury, are you and Mr. Notman going to be our mum and dad now?" And Mrs. Trinklebury and Notman both blushed. Molly and Rocky gave everyone the presents that they bought at the airport. Cameras and Walkmans for Hazel Cynthia, radio-controlled cars and planes for Gordon, Roger and Craig, and teddies and walkie-talkies for Gemma, Jerry, Ruby and Jinx. Jerry also got a stuffed mouse. Everyone was given a tiny TV set and a huge bag of sweets. Mrs. Trinklebury loved the perfume and the necklace they bought her, and Mr. Notman liked his new suit. After the present giving, Gemma asked Molly to do her song and dance routine again. "You know, the one you did at the talent show." Molly smiled and shook her head. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Gemma, but the thing is, I've given all of that up. Did you like it?" "Yeah, you were brilliant," remembered Gemma. "I was, wasn't I?" agreed Molly. When the candles on the table were melted to the size of mushrooms, Mrs. Trinklebury suddenly tapped the side of her glass with a fork. Everyone grew silent as shy and Mrs. Trinklebury stood up, coughed, and bravely proceeded. "Now, as you all know, I'm a stutterer," she began, smiling. "But you're very nice," said Gemma. "Well, thank you, Gemma, and so are you. And stutter as I may, I'm going to talk to you all now about something that I haven't told anyone for years, but which I must tell you all. This is the right time to tell you. It's the right time because at last this building, our home, Hardwick House, has got happiness inside it. Molly and Rocky, as you know, have asked me to come and live here and help take care of all of you, which I hope is all right with you." Mrs. Trinklebury took a deep breath. "Before now, there was a lot of sadness in this building, and some of you probably felt that no one understood how it felt to be alone in the world. I don't think Miss Addiston helped. I used to feel the sadness here when I came in to clean, and it almost broke my heart. Because, well, deep down, I know what it feels like to be alone too. Because, well, and this is what I wanted to tell you, I'm an orphan too. You may think I'm a bit old and fat to be an orphan, but when I was a little girl, I had to go to an orphanage too. You see, my dad died when I was 2, and then my mother got married again. Trouble was, her new husband had 3 children, and then he had another 2 with my mum, and well, there were just too many children. And my poor mum, she couldn't cope. One of us had to go, and the one that went was me. Now, that never seemed fair to me, and for a long time I hated those children for pushing me out, because they did, you know. They were like their dad. He was a brute of a man, and they were brutish too, and they held on and they kicked, and I was the one who got pushed out. I was more timid than them, you see. Then one day I heard a song that seemed to be written for me. Some of you know it. Mrs. Trinkleby smiled at Molly and Rocky. But for you others, I'll sing it now. It goes like this. Mrs. Trinkleby's quaky voice filled the dining room. Forgive little birds that brown cuckoo for pushing you out of your nests. It's what Mama Cuckoo taught it to do. She taught it that pushing is best. Molly looked around, wondering if Hazel and the bigger children would be making faces after hearing the lullaby, but they weren't. They were sitting still, listening intently, except for Gordon, who was still eating. That taught me a lot, said Mrs. Trinkleby. It made me realise that I mustn't hate those children who pushed me out the nest, because they were only being how their dad taught them to be. So I forgave them. And from that moment onwards, life was better because I didn't hate anymore. Now, we all have stories of how we got here, and probably some of you feel angry with whoever it is who left you here. But you must try to remember that they were like that because that's how they were taught to be. You must try to feel sorry for them and forgive them. And because mother cuckoos teach their babies bad habits, and because what you learn as a child, you will pass on to people around you. From now on, this house is going to be a house of happiness. From this evening on, every single one of us is going to consider other people's feelings. She turned to the small children. We don't need nastiness, do we? What's nastiness? A nasty bug. We don't want to spread it, do we? No, agreed Jerry, we don't. So, concluded Mrs. Trinkleby, if it's all right with you, I want to change the name of this building so that from now on it's a place of joy. From now on, I propose this building should be known as Happiness House. Everyone stared at her. Are you agreed then? If you are, raise your glasses. Everyone raised their glasses of cube. Knockman raised his the highest. Cynthia flicked a piece of bread at Craig. To Happiness House, Mrs. Trinkleby toasted. To Happiness House, everyone agreed. And in the distance they all heard the sound of the cuckoo clock chiming 10. Now, finished Mrs. Trinkleby, I think it's time for bed. But first of all, Knockman interrupted her, I would like to do a few little tricks. Molly gulped. She had a feeling that Knockman was about to misbehave. But over the next half hour, Molly saw a new side of him that surprised her. Notman was in his element as he thrilled everyone with a fantastic array of card tricks, finding cards behind people's ears and under their chairs. He showed them how to cheat at poker, and Molly noticed Gordon's eyes lighting up as he watched Notman in action. She'd have to keep an eye on those two, she thought. Gordon's fascination with Notman could lead to trouble. After his card tricks, Notman showed off his amazing sleight of hand. He took a purse from Mrs. Trinkleberry's cardigan pocket without her noticing, and a packet of sweets from under Hazel's arm. Everyone clapped and thought he was one of the nicest men they'd ever met. Little did Molly and everyone know that actually Notman had misbehaved. He had stolen a camera from Hazel, a lolly from Ruby, £5 from Gordon's top pocket, and Mrs. Trinkleberry's front door key. And he had stuffed all these things into the front of his shirt. There they lay, below his diamond-eyed scorpion, which nestled comfortably amongst the hairs on his chest. By 11, everyone had gone to bed. Only Molly and Rocky still sat in their chairs by the crackling fire, wide awake. Petula lay happily at their feet, sucking a stone. "What a day," sighed Rocky. "Mind you, I'm not tired because by New York's time it's only 6 in the evening." "Yep, we've got jet lag," agreed Molly, staring into the fire. "It was great today," she said. "And actually, it's lovely here when it's warm." So different from when Addiston was in charge. "Trouble is," said Molly, frowning, "that oil for the boiler was so expensive. £250. Mrs. Trinkleberry gave me the bill." Molly reached into her fleece's zipper pocket and pulled out her envelope of money. "If we keep buying oil, and if we start spending money on other things like redecorating the bedrooms and buying new furniture, soon we may not be able to afford heating or Mrs. Trinkleberry's here or good food. And we did promise we weren't going to use our hypnosis anymore. Maybe we were idiots to say we go straight. Because, Rocky, I don't really see how we're going to manage." Petula looked up, sucking her stone, sensing that Molly was worried. "Well," said Rocky, "we'll just have to try and make ends meet. Things aren't going to be always perfect, Molly, but they'll be much better than before, and any problems that we have, well, we'll work it out." Nodded Molly. Petula cocked her head to one side and wondered how she could cheer Molly up. She hated it when Molly was worried. She thought of her usual trick that normally worked. Molly liked it when Petula gave her one of her sucking stones. So, Petula affectionately scratched Molly's leg with her front paw, dropped her stone at Molly's feet, and barked a friendly bark. This time, however, to Petula's surprise, Molly reacted quite differently to Petula's present. "Oh, my giddy aunt! I can't believe it!" Molly said, gawping down at the floor, and Rocky, equally stunned, exclaimed, "Jeepers, Petula! Where did you get that?" Petula smiled a doggy smile. She had to agree that particular stone was a nice one, the hardest one that she'd ever sucked. She found it in Molly's anorak pocket when she was trying to get comfortable yesterday morning. Molly picked up the massive diamond and turned to Rocky with her mouth open. It's the diamond that the gangster was holding in the bank vault." "I remember I put it in my pocket, but I forgot to put it with the other bank stuff, so it never got packed into a gnome." Rocky looked perplexed. But the TV report said that every last jewel had been returned to the bank. Maybe this diamond, Molly said, wasn't on any list yet. I remember the gangster guy saying that he'd stolen it that day from another crook. Barked Petula as if to say, take it, it's yours. Molly scrunched her velvety ears. What should we do with it, Rocky? I don't know, said Rocky, stroking the hefty diamond. It would be very difficult, maybe impossible, to find out who it originally belonged to. Then a naughty grin spread across his face. You'd better put it in a safe place, Molly. And that is the end of chapter 28. Ooh, I hope you enjoyed that. And yes, if you did, please tell your friends. Press the red subscribe button. What else can you do? Oh, you could press the I liked this button, not the I didn't like this button. You want the I like this button. And yes, and please join me for chapter 39, which is the last chapter of this book. So until chapter 39, wherever you are, happy hypnotizing, be happy. Bye. Bye.